No, we didn't miss it all. Okay, terrific. So you're even. So today should be a home run. Looking at what you've got, we'll say this. For over the break, you have, I think, 3 things that you're going to be finishing. Okay? You have, number 1 was your project. 1 page-ish type using Big Kid grammar. Second thing is, I think some of you are close to being done with this, but this right here is number 2. Third thing that you're going to be finishing is, and I screwed something up, so at some point you'll have a Math Excel assignment, which will take you approximately 40-ish minutes to go through as a cumulative review in some of the topics that we've done in here. But that's what your homework is for over the break. Now, last time we had class, we learned about 2 special types of formulas. And those formulas were exponential growth and exponential decay. So when we do these out, it always gets a little bit awkward deciding which one it's going to be, whether it's growth or decay. But the first thing that you need to make sure that you have is that you understand what the exponential growth formula is and what the decay formula is. So hands up, please, if you remember what either one of those formulas is going to be. If you see generic exponential growth, what would that be, or decay? What's one of them? Is that growth or decay? Perfect. So y is equal to a, 1 plus r, raised to the t power. So far, we're great. What's the other one going to be?
A times y, 1 minus r.
Time is normally measured in years, but it's measured in, I guess, iterations or cycles through it. It's the number of times that this is getting applied. And that's something that you really do need to understand, because the time isn't always years. So far it's been years because that's the units that we're working with. Now, take a look, please, at our first question, and we'll tell you this. We'll show you actually at the end of the time today. There was actually a memo sent out from the state to all of the math teachers that said, hey, just so you know, this is all of the stuff that we could test on. And from my perspective, that pretty much indicates, why do you think that they're reminding every math teacher what could be tested on? What'd you say? Because we're creatures of habit. They're letting us know, hey, this is going to be on the test. We'll show you the memo that they sent out so you can see it. Take a look at the first one. This question here, this is an actual READ question from the last Common Core READ. Take a look at what's there right now. Read what's there. Go through right now. It's the same one that's on your paper, top of page 17. Read what's there right now and get started on how you think 17, what it would look like, how it plays out, etc. We're going to work our way through it a little bit even slow. Let's start off with this. Is this an exponential growth or decay question? Hands up, please, when you can answer that. Is this exponential growth or exponential decay? This would be exponential growth. And Robbie, what's the formula you need to know for exponential growth?
That's y equals a 1 plus r equals 2.
Now, what does the a represent?
Initial value.
Initial value, what's the r?
Uh,
The rate, and what's the t? Time. So looking at this, we know some stuff that I can fill in. It says last year for this restaurant chain, the sales increased, the total revenue increased 5.25%. So I'd write this out as y is equal to some a. This is 1 plus 0.0525 raised to the t power. So now I'd go through and combine this, and I'd normally say this would be y equals sum a, and then 1.0525 raised to, in this case, the t power. Which of these models would you pick for this question? Which of these models would you pick for this question? We've got nobody. 1, 2. You're all going to fall for it. What do you want to say? Now, I'm going to stop you there. What's the disconnect? Because when this question was asked, only 21% of Webster students got this right, which is literally less than a blind guess. If you were to go through and look at this, there's something about here that doesn't jive when you're reading it. There's an incongruence between. Something's not matching up. You know what it is? Close. There's something about the structure and the foundation of the question, though, that's odd. Do you know what it is? That's it. The timing is off. The timing on this is off. So that's the yearly rate, which means the rate is applied once a year. How can I find out what the monthly rate would be? Be careful. Go ahead. Go in right now. I'm going to say this. You'll type and make sure you've signed in together. Now, that's not right, but that's pretty close. So if you haven't signed in yet, please go through and do so. Go in and sign in if you have not already yet. So when you do that out, and it looks like some of you have, so they went through and took, go in and type in the rate, and then divide that by 12. So now it looks like, oh, now here's even another one. So I'm not trying to make an example. This doesn't have the name on it. Looking at what's there, this person did two things. They took the overall growth rate and divided by 12, and then made this a growth rate. Is that correct? Because you'd have to take the 1 away to start, because it's got to be growth still. So you only need the fraction of the the fraction of the yearly rate. So they went through and did this here. Now convert that, and by the way, this, well, it gives you it as a decimal, so you'd have to change it. Do this. Put in 0.0525, which is that amount as a decimal. Divide that by 12, and then add 1 to it, because that would give you the amount. Now, is that an answer selection? Is that an answer selection? No. It looks like it is, but it's not. This is why sometimes the Regents covers its rear by saying, well, they could do something wrong and still get to the right answer. But this is not any of our growth rates over here. This is none of our growth rates. But you told us previously we need to take a 12th of it. Here's what you have to recognize. As of now, this formula here, the frame of reference or the units on this would be this percentage per year. We're looking to figure out what it is per month. So what I need to do is take y is equal to a times 1.0525. Now that's per year. We need to convert it into a monthly rate, which would be this raised to the 1/12th power. That's something that you need to see. To convert that in, you raise it to the 1/12th power. Not multiply by 1/12, but raise it to the 1/12th power. What does my new base become? Hands up, please, when you can read me what the new base on this becomes when you go through and raise it to the 1/12th power. Don't stare, go through and actually type it in. It's not math magic how it happens. We got one person, 2, 3, 4. Swiss cheese class today. Leah? 1.00427 raised to the monthly power. So which answer would we give? Choice 3. Now here's the other end of it. What is the monthly growth rate as a percent? What would the monthly growth rate be as a percent? It's bigger than 1, so it's definitely growth. What would the monthly growth rate be as a percent? One person? As enriched students, this should not be difficult at all. Not in the least. Look at what's there. If this is my model, what is my monthly growth rate? If that's the equation that models it. 3 of us? 0.427%. And when you get 0.427% for 12 consecutive months, what would that be for a year? What? 5.25. Well, you have to make sure that your units match. What was the problem with the units? This was the amount for the year, right? Over the year, we need this in terms of months. So there wasn't anything matching between the units. That's where we're going to get a problem. Now, we're going to go through and do this. Before we fill this chart in, have you ever owned a business before in your life? No? Have you? What's Club Penguin?
I own a couple.
I don't know what those things are. Okay, so we're going to say yes. All right. So, if you're going to own a bank, okay? Congratulations. And you own a bank. What do you want your bank? So bank, I don't know. What do you want yours to be? Outrage and offended. I'm already, just from the name alone, I'm already more inclined to go to outrage and offended bank. Now, I, obviously, follow. Walking down the street, I had in my hand $10,000. But I'm feeling a little unsafe with a lot of people obviously see someone of my stature, they associate me with having some exorbitant amount of cash on hand. Dollars are falling out of my pocket as I walk down the road. So there's two banks. There's I don't know bank and outrage and offended bank. Right? So you're going to start off, and I don't know bank says, listen, deposit your money with us. I'm going to give you 4% interest once a year. That's good. I go through and say, all right, I could go in, and right now, I don't know bank is going to give me 4% interest done once a year. So let's figure out how much I'm going to have after 1 year and then 2 years. So let's go over, please, to the next page of your notes. Let's figure out, this is going to be for, I don't know bank, to figure out how much money I have after 1 year. It's a simple exponential growth. She's giving me 4% interest done once a year. So that's 4% interest on top of the money I deposited. So how much money? So it'll be 10,000, the original amount, times 1 plus my growth rate, which is 1.04, raised to the 1 power in this case. So how much money am I going to have in the account after 1 year? Cassie, how much money would I have? $10,400 and no change. How could I figure out how much money I'd have after 2 years? Nick, what would I have to do to see that?
Raise 1.04 to the power of 2.
Okay, so I go through and compute that out. And Luke, let us know how much I'm going to have after 2 years. Not bad. But wait just a second. Outraged and offended bank is currently outraged and offended that I am going to I don't know bank. And they want me to come over to them. And they say, listen, here's my deal. I'm going to give you, still give you 4% interest, because that's a federal rate. The government sets the rate. I'm going to give you 2%, or sorry, I'm going to give you 4% interest, but I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm going to give you 2% after 6 months, and then 2 more percent after 12 months, for a total of how many percents during the year? 4. 2 plus 2 gives you 4. So, how many times is this bank going to be giving me interest? Twice. And what is the interest rate going to be? 2% twice to get me 4%. So I go through and type in 10,000 times 1.02. Now, let's see if what Outraged and Offended Bank is doing makes sense. So, what would we get, Abby? What's our balance going to be after 1 year? Now, so which bank am I making out better in after 1 year? There you go. The only danger is bank 2 is getting outraged and offended right now. But they're not an outraged and offended customer. Now, how much money, what would I need to do to figure out how much money I have in the account after 2 years? What would I need to type in to figure that out? Robbie?
You could type in 10,000 times 1.02 squared.
Nope. Squared gets you after 1 year. Who can tell me what it would be after 2? If you raise to the 4th, because how many times have you applied the interest? Over 2 years. How many times would you have applied the interest? 4. Twice the first year, twice the second. So how much money am I going to have at the beautiful Outraged and Offended Bank after this amount of time? We got 2 people who can tell me seriously? No, I'm kidding. As an Outraged and Offended customer, I am outraged and offended. Erica, do you know?
2,124.
All right, not bad. Now, I don't know bank wants me back, obviously. So they've lost me as a customer because Outraged and Offended Bank has given me the same interest done 2 times a year. So now, I don't know bank says, wait, I don't know why you left, but I want you back. Those idiots over there, they're only giving you interest twice a year. I'm going to give you interest quarterly, 4 times a year. By the way, for some reason, this seems a little diabolical. I don't know what world you live in. If something's done quarterly, how many times a year is it done? Easy way to remember, and somebody actually said this previously, how many quarters are in a dollar? And they said, isn't that the same 2 as before? So if that's your answer, if the answer to how many quarters in a dollar is anything other than 4, don't make change. You throw off the register. Okay. Now, if you do it quarterly, that's done 4 times a year. Okay. So, how much interest am I going to be earning each one of those 4 times a year? Hands up, please, if you can tell me. How much am I going to be earning? 1% 4 times a year. So, what would the expression that you type in look like, Alex M?
10,000 times 1.0224.
Nope. What's your interest rate on this case?
Oh,
1.01, yeah. So how much money am I going to have? We'll make Ben do it. We'll taunt him, because now I'm leaving him for the other bank, and now he's going to tell me how much money I got from my new, better bank. Yeah, you should. As the CEO of Outraged and Offended Bank, I hope you constantly be outraged and offended. And 4 cents. They're giving me more than just that. They're giving me 4 cents as well. Now, how would we figure out how much is in the account after 2 years? Hands up, please, if you can tell me how I figure out how much is in the account after 2 years. 3 plus. There you go. That's how many cycles they've had. So now let's figure out how much we get there. And Alex, let us know how much you have.
$1,828.57.
Now, who am I at? Am I over here? You? That was you? Wonderful. Guess what? Outraged and offended, stepping up their game. They go, you're right. 2 times a year wasn't enough for someone like you. You're worth more than that. Instead of giving it to you quarterly, he's going to give me interest how many times? 12. That's every month. By the way, just as a quick refresher, how many months are there in a year? Hands up, please. Can you tell me how many weeks there are in a year? How many? 52. Thank you. Hands up, please, if you can tell me how many days there are in a year. Hands up, please, if you just, again. Answers vary. It is not a subjective thing. There's 15 of these. Ish. Okay. Thank you. Now, some people may argue she's sometimes wrong. Yep. Was this a leap year?
Yes,
It was? No. Yes. That's what somebody says. They go, I guess we'll never know. Looking at the calendar. Now. So he's going to give me interest every month. So here's where it gets awkward, because then people start going, well, wait a minute, I don't know. Stop. To figure out how much the monthly is, we're going to start off with the initial amount times. Now, the calculator is a fabulous thing because it doesn't need you to simplify out the expressions. So, what do I have to do to figure out my rate? Let's ask that. How would I figure out what the rate is going to be? I don't need the rate. I'm asking you a different question than what number is it. I'm asking you, how would you figure out what the rate is if it's getting done monthly? What would you have to do? One person can tell me. What would you do to figure it out? Yeah.
Find the rate of the first equation and divide by 12.
Yeah. What is our growth? What is the interest rate? What's your interest rate in this entire problem? It's been the same. What's your interest rate? What is it? 1.04. Not 1.04. What is the interest rate alone? 4%, which would be 0.04. Okay? But he's right. What do you have to do to that rate to figure out what it would be if it was monthly? Divide it by 12. So I do this. 1 plus. Now, do I care what this ends up being? No. If I type it in like that, it's fine. What power am I going to raise it to? Hands up, please. You can tell me what the exponent on this would be. 2 of us? 12. That's how many iterations of it or cycles it would do. So now, go through and evaluate this out right now, please. I don't need you to simplify. You can type it in exactly as it looks. The calculator is a very smart piece of equipment. What's this going to end up being? 1 person. 2. Jessica, what'd you get? There you go. So that's if I'm earning monthly interest, which would be 12 times a year for 1 year. Who can tell me what I'd have to do to figure out how much I've got after 2 years? 1 person. 2. 3. The exponent, everything stays the same, but the exponent is now going to be 24 because you've done 12 cycles twice. So how much money do I have then? Ned, how much money would you have? Now, looking at these, what do you notice about my balance every time the bank applies interest more frequently? What do you notice about the balance every time the bank applies interest more frequently? 1, 2 of us, 3, 4, what? Yeah, my balance increases because I'm earning more interest. But something else interesting happens. How much interest do I earn if I get it done monthly? How much interest do I earn if I have the interest compounded monthly? After a year, yeah. No. How much money, number-wise? How much more money am I leaving with after I drop my 10 grand in the bank to come back in a year? Yeah. No, after 1 year. After 1 year. 407.42. Now, how much money do I have if I go with I don't know bank at the beginning? How much money would I have? $400 in interest. That's it. So, if I'm a customer, which one does it make sense to go to? Well, whoever's giving me the most interest. Now, inevitably something like this happens. So you gave me interest 4 times a month. He was up to 12. You're trying to win me back. How many times a year are you going to give me interest? 24, all right? Now it's your turn. How many times are you going to give me interest? 52. Pathetic. How many times are you going to give me interest? 100, all right? How many times are you going to give me interest? 365. How many times are you going to give me interest? He's giving me interest once a day. 1,000 times, okay? You're trying to win me back. She's giving me interest 3 times-ish a day. What? 10,000 times. All right, ball's in your court now. Whoa, 100. Okay, so you get to see, eventually it becomes, what ends up happening actually is what's called a calculus concept. Watch what happens when I went from 1 to 2 times, how much more interest did I make? Hands up, please, if you can tell me after 1 year. Abby? $4 more. When I went from 2 to 4 times a year, how much more interest did I make? When I went from 2 to 4, how much more did I make? $2.04. As I went from 4 all the way up to 12 times a year, who can tell me how much more interest I made? What do you notice? Even though we're increasing, what do you notice about the rate of change of the rate of change? What do you notice about that? It keeps going down. Is it ending up being a huge, significant amount? No, especially if you start doing it, 10,000, 20,000 once a day, hourly, every second, etc. So those are things that you have to keep in mind. So looking at this, what you notice is it's going to start approaching something. It's actually a calculus concept called a limit. See how it keeps getting bigger, but it levels off? It sort of approaches an asymptote. That's what a limit is in calculus if you take it out to infinity. Is that it's saying no matter how many times no matter how big I make this, it's going to level off. So what we need you to understand is this. We're going to give you we'll show you this formula. It is not given to you. To find the balance after T years, the initial deposit is done, compounded N times a year. Here's the formula that you need to know. And make sure that you understand this formula is used when the interest is compounded with some frequency, meaning daily, which there's 365 of, weekly, which there's 52 of, not 48. Those are things that you've got to be able to recognize when to use that. Now, with that in mind, go through and answer out question number 1. John Paul, what would you do for this?
I would be why equals 5,000 and then proceed 1 plus 4 times 6 minus 4 times 6.
Close. One part's missing. I don't know if you just mentioned it.
The rate would be over 4, so it's 36 over 4.
Yeah, don't forget, it's got to be divided by that. So if you don't have it there, go through and make it be there. Take a look at the next, because you're earning a fraction of the rate every time. Nathan, what would you give as your final then? Yep.
Yeah, so.
There you go. Questions on that? Go through right now, please, and do out question number 2. Find the balance after 20 years on 5,000 invested in 8% compounded monthly. Show me the substitution in. Yes, you need to show the substitution in. Christina, what would you go through and write out?
1 plus 40 over 1.
Over what? Nope. Who knows what the n is going to be in this case? 12, yeah. And to what power would you raise it to then? Now, should be 240, I think. 12 times 20. Now, go through and compute this out, though. And notice you didn't even need it. You could have left it literally as 12 times 20. What value, Talia, would you get as your final? Now, and that's how it goes when you don't go through it and make those any deposits in there. Questions on this? Now, we talked before, though, about these limits and this notion, so we're going to skip over something briefly. We'll go through, answer our question number 3 now to start. Answer our question 3. We're not going to do this part in the bottom of the page yet. But answer our question 3 at the top. Now, when I do this equation out, I'm going to tell you this. I view this a little bit differently than you might have. This is telling you they take out this loan every 14 days, they're charged 30% interest compounded. They took out this amount of loan, $300, which expression can be used that they'd have after 1 year. There's a problem with this that's a similar one to what we did before, so we're going to have to work to rectify it. But right away, I can actually eliminate 2 of the choices. Who can tell me which of the 2 choices I can eliminate immediately? 2 choices. This goes from 50-50 down to, 25% to 50-50. And you'll take those odds anytime you can. We got 4 people, seriously? Which ones can we go through and eliminate? Abby? Which ones can you get rid of right away? What's that? What number choices? 1, 2, 3, or 4? 1. And? Why? Yeah. What type of equation do we need for that? A growth. And if the decimal's between 0 and 1, that's a decay equation. So you've got to know that that's what's going on there. The second thing that you've got to do is recognize this. Look at the form that both of those are given in. I do it like this. My initial amount's going to be 300. That's a given. It's 1 plus the rate. But now, and by the way, 30% interest, you're going to see becomes colossal. What we're going to see now is this. You've got to play with that exponent and see what it's going to be, because how long is a cycle for the rate to accumulate? 14 days. How long are we leaving it in for? A full year, which is 365. This is another, it seems like when they ask the questions, they're going to give you some sort of incongruence with the units. So looking at what we have now, how could I figure out the number of cycles if interest is applied every 14 days and we're leaving it in for 365? Which equation represents that? Which equation is going to show the correct number of cycles if it's going to get applied every 14 days, but we're leaving it in 365? Which model would that be? We got 1, 2 of us, 3, 4. What do you want to say? Not going to be 2, because this here would not even be 1. Go into your calculator, please, right now and type that in. Type in and tell me what the decimal approx to that's going to be. What'd you get?
0.03.
Maybe in check. No, it would terminate. Does it terminate? Or not? Go up, select that value. It's not a mystery question. Go up and select the value, hit enter. Is more coming when you hit enter or less? Go through and select. Yeah, so if we were to list this out, it would be this whole amount here. So when I list this out, I always put, to show that it continues on, put some dots. But that's fine. Go the other direction now. And do 365 divided by 14. And what's that going to give you? $26.07. So place yourself in the position. How many times would you be applying interest if it's once every 14 days for a year? How many times would it apply interest? Yeah. 26 or 27. Actually 26. It hasn't worked up to its 27th iteration yet. Questions on that? That's why it is what it is. And by the way, just so you're aware, there's these actually, they used to give these loans out, and they always would set up, for some reason, your armed services bases. And the reason that that's so bad is because, well, do this. Go and evaluate that out right now. See how much the person would owe if they didn't pay on their payday loan. They took out $300. And by the way, this is actually what the interest rates on payday loans are. Go in right now and type it in and see how much money you would now owe. We got 1, 2 of us. Look at how much money you would now owe if you didn't pay that off immediately. Yeah. There we go, $250,000. These loans literally put people into bankruptcy, and for some reason they always open up in poorer communities and or near armed forces bases, because people sort of need money, especially if you're in the armed services. They don't make a ton of money by and large, and they tend to have big families, and families, if you've got 6 kids, somebody's pulling in $35,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. You've got a bunch of children. That's really not a ton of money to get by on. If there's a car problem, these payday loan companies would open up and say, yeah, we'll give you a loan. based on whenever this next paycheck comes in. But we're going to charge you 30% interest every 14 days, which is a huge amount of interest. And it ended up being that these were so terrible that Congress, which does nothing ever, I mean, they just always they're arguing with each other. It's like a tug of war, essentially, where everyone is just like this all the time. They actually came together to say that this was wrong. And the banks, this is always what makes me laugh, they create a law to outlaw the lender. But then, right before they do it, they throw in some provisions. And it's all these, like, loopholes. So they said, not that one, that the language of it said this, that you can't operate, not give to a person in America, but you can't operate a payday lending company in the United States of America, which is a very important distinction. Because the banks that lend them said, all right, we're still good. We just can't have stores like we used to. We can still advertise for these online, and our employees may have to move. But the employees can even still be Americans. Where are there very small, independent nations all throughout the United States of America? Where? No, not there, not there, because that would be different. There you go. So now you can find, and all they need to have is a P.O. box. They don't even need to open up that, because it's all done online, banking is all done. So they'd open up a P.O. box, and then somehow they find a way to track ads to make it pertinent to you. So if they know, like if your profile would indicate that you're somebody who is in the armed services and or from a low income area, they would go through and peg you. So you know how those Google ads, do you ever look on Google sometimes, you're like, wow, I was just shopping on Amazon for a new remote control for my television, and then a web page loads, and it says on the side, hey, look at it, you can buy a remote control for your television on Amazon. Has anyone had that before? Yeah, that's that type of track. So if you're like literally looking up, if you've gone to a banking website and you've been in the military, or you're from a low income zip code, those ads pop up all over the place. And so now they do the same thing to a lesser extent, but I always find that to be a little bit funny that they go through, and so if they find one law, they make a law, so they find their way around. Now, we're not going to do this because the more times you get it, you're going to make a little bit more money, but not a huge amount more. So the second thing that we're going to have you do is that go into your calculators right now, please, and go to your working screen. We're not going to have time to go over where it comes from, but you already know one value that's an irrational constant. Does anybody know the one number that you currently know that is an irrational constant value? Something that's irrational and a number. But it's only written as, you don't put the bar over it or any garbage like that. You know? No. I is another one, though, that we need to know, because that was just mentioned on the Regents review sheet that they sent. Yeah. Pi. Pi is an irrational constant. Go into your calculator right now, press the pi button, and select pi, and hit enter. It continues on forever and never becomes a fraction. It continues on forever and is not a fraction. Now, there's another irrational constant. Hit the pi button again, please, and go over. There's the number e. And e is about 2.718 and some change. And that, too, is an irrational constant. You look like something's wrong with you.
Merry Christmas, guys.
We're learning today. We don't show Home Alone.
Who's got Home Alone?
I don't know.
We're teaching the Apocalypse movie.
You're looking sad. You're really looking sad.
Your poor wife. And pick up your children.
Now, what you need to understand is this right now is a number. So, if the interest is compounded with a frequency, that's the R over the N. Because you got to apply it X number of times. We started going here. If this is compounded continuously, this is the formula. This is a continuous growth formula. So you use this formula when you see continuous growth and or continuous interest. That's very important. You've got to make linkages here. Now, it's just taking the P as the principal or initial value times E raised to the rate times time power. Looking at these questions, a bacteria is growing continuously at a rate of. Now, if it was just growing regular, and it said it was growing at a rate of, that would be exponential growth, 1 plus R. This says that it's growing continuously at that rate, which means this question here is going to be the PERT question. Now, we're going to use that model to figure out the population at the end of one day. So when we make our replacements in, Anna, what would this look like for question 1A? Make your replacements in so we can see how much we have after one day, and what would that look like? Times what? 1. Notice, there has to be congruence between your units. How often is the interest getting applied? Or sorry, not the interest. How often is the growth happening? Per what? Per day, and this is per one day. If it was a month, you'd have to raise it to the 1/30th power. So we need to figure that out. So go in right now, type that in your calculator, and see what you get, because this always ends up being an interesting question. And it's one that we start arguing with when we're doing the grading. So you type this in, and Leah, what do you get? Yeah, something like this, right? Now, this always comes up, so I want you to do this. 24 hours after we start this out, right, we go in, and we count the number of bacteria that are there. How many would I count? Because that's the answer to this question. If I count them, how many would I count? Nope. After 24 hours, after one day, how many would I have? People start arguing. Well, what if they wrote 0.1? Is that right? I don't know. Have you ever seen 0.1 of a bacteria? Now, the question that came up on the Regents exam had to do with deer. And the answer came out to be something like 43.8 deer. And they go, that's fine. Let's take that answer. I want you to let that sink in between your ears for a second. Let that bounce around. Activate those 3 or 4 math brain cells that we've got. What's the problem with 43.8 deer? What do you think is the problem? Right, so then I immediately started, and they go, well, they can have, right, and I go, fine. And I'm sitting there going, you can't have 43.8 deer. It's not physically possible. And they go, well, it's the function. And the question I'm asking you to state what this is without the real world example. It's saying, how many would you count? The only way, so then, to show them how stupid it was, I looked up and I typed into Google Images 0.8 of a deer. Because maybe there's an image somewhere, someone found 0.8 of a deer. There weren't. You found a lot of 8 deer, but there's not 0.8 of a deer. And it always comes up, it's sort of like the Walking Dead thing. Like, what would 0.8 of a deer look like, and how would you get to it? Like, would you cut the deer? Like, would it just be missing a leg? Because technically then it's maybe 0.75, not 0.8, and we don't round up. So maybe like some of them, like would you cut the deer this way? Like going side to side, so maybe it would try to walk and fall over because it would have a front part of that. Maybe it would have half of a back. What if it had like no head? If it was like the upper third of a deer? It's a very, what does 0.8 of a deer look like? It's gross. You don't want to see it. So it can't be 0.8. Same thing with the bacteria. So do you round, and that was the other thing. They go, well, they round up. It's 43.8 deers, the same, oh, by the way, that was the other thing. Then they started yelling at me, and I was incorrect. Deers is not a word. 43.8 deer, is that the same as 44 deer? No, it's 43 deer. Now, go through, figure out how much you'd have after 5 days. Yes. What would you write out first? Perfect. Who can tell me how many not deers. I have to get his to say. How many deer are floating around? Got one person. Well, now, hands are out 2, last one for the day. Alexa, what would you write out? Nope. Careful. It says compounded continuously. So our formula is going to have an E in it. Who can tell me what's... We're going to put an E next. What's going in the exponent spot on this? Seriously? It's going... Yeah.
0.0.
Okay. Yeah. What answer would we go through and get then? Yeah. And if you left it right there, you fell for it. You fell for it. If you stop right there, nothing we've done is wrong. Why is this not the answer?
So there's 5 amount of meters.
So what would you have to subtract?
2,654.5.
Can you do that in your head?
154.5.
That's how much interest you've earned. Yeah. How many things do you have to do over the break?
3.
1, do something good and then square it. 2, finish that question. 3, there'll be a Math Excel available to you, hopefully by the end of the day. That one I forgot because I didn't give it out to everyone. I didn't give it out to everyone. Sorry. The sections that didn't get it, I'll hand it out to them. It's going to be due like the Tuesday or Wednesday when you get back. It won't be due on Monday. Have a great rest of your day, angels. What's that? No. It used to be, there was a lady who came in, who kind of, Mr. Grove,